Hey, this is Rumblequake, and this video is just in response to someone who asked about the Rumblequake build, kind of break down and give the idea, the background of this guy, this tune. The idea here, I built a lot of warlocks. I'll start off with that. You can see I've got a few different builds sitting out here that I've been tinkering with for a long time. Inconceivable is actually a derivative of Rumblequake. In fact, you could think of him as version 1. Char's is one of my mains, and he's more of your typical unyielding sentinel, enlightened spirit. In fact, he's changed just a bit to do much more in tainted scholar, but he's more of the what you would expect as far as a warlock build. Rumble was constructed with the idea of using Sharadi instead, and trying to maximize criticals and just have overwhelming offense DPS. And so this guy is modeled after a traditional Sharadi caster in a lot of ways. He's Master of Knowledge based, a lot of powering up type of effects like Imperial Magic, Master of Knowledge, Arcane Supremacy, and then we go area of effect stuff with Force, Light, and Sonic. And that's where the Paladin comes in as well. Since he's lawful good, we're forced into being a Fey Warlock. But I took 3 levels of Paladin because the Sharadi Warlock build's biggest drawback is PRR and hit points. So the idea here is he's going to be using a shield, not heavy armor, and we're going to take advantage of the Paladin plus 20% hit point in Sacred Defender to augment his defensive capabilities. And so what we've come up with is a pretty decent hit point warlock. If I remember right, he's somewhere in the 1400 range. Very high spell power, and what's really nice about this build is it gets better as the dungeon gets harder. The more bad guys you're confronting it, the faster you can charge up and start laying out some pretty overwhelming criticals, especially once Wellspring goes off. If you're ever lucky enough to get Arcane Supremacy and Wellspring and be at 30 charges of Master of Knowledge, it's pretty insane what starts to happen. Even at Epic Elite. Now, I don't really run him in the Reaper levels as far as the Epic content and Legendary content is concerned. I stay at Epic Elite, Legendary Elite, and that's just kind of where we focus with this build now. So this is, like I said, it's not really a Reaper level build because they tend to rely upon the temporary spell points, temporary hit points to keep themselves alive. I do not do that really with Rumblequake, and I'll show you a few examples here, but we'll go ahead and step through the build a little bit more in detail. So we've logged Rumble in, and as you can see from his equipment, he's carrying a shield, and improved shield mastery just went flying by. That's part of the PRR fixes. There's 2 shields that I use currently, and there's a third one that I'm grinding for right now. If I'm in DPS mode, this is kind of the gear set. I'll have a vacuum weapon. The vacuum weapon's actually made for one of the earlier builds of Sharadi where he was undead. So it's a negative energy void kind of a vacuum weapon, but it works just fine. I really want it for the vacuum effect, which is stacks of vulnerable. And then we use the Epic Shield of Tireless Aid, really just because it's a shield with spellcasting implement. What I really want to have for him is Deathic Runestone, which we're in the process of grinding out right now. And for tanky mode, we go over to a Skybolt shield. I actually run around with the Heroic Elite version because it does everything I need it to do, and the nice thing is it's no arcane spell failure at all. So I can put on a high PRR kind of a shield, decent damage reduction, and I can eventually I'll probably grind out the epic version, but I'm just not really too worried about it right now. So that's kind of the gear as far as weapons, what's going on in the hands. As far as everything else is concerned, it's all about maximizing his spellcasting really. So we'll go with the circlet. That's out of the harbor. I want to say Illusory Larcener, but I'm not sure. I think so. Then we'll go with some Slaver's gear. This took forever, but again, you can see the nullification. That's part of being a undead caster. But it's really the constitution that I'm worried about here. Legendary Empowered Dragon Scale, very nice. This comes out of Search and Rescue over an Evening Star. Legendary Green Steel Steel Weave. This is plus intelligence items, and I want to say it's air based. No, this one's fire. Fire and negative. Yeah, so it's spell points, and it will be intelligence skills to help with spellcraft, search, which I end up using a lot with this, especially if I'm soloing the halls, the haunted halls up in Evening Star. Spell resistance belt. I'm still working on getting something a little more appropriate. I'd like to be able to get one that gets me up into the 60s for spell resistance, but this is very good so far. Mandatory Lantern Ring upgraded. Lots of cool stuff on that, but it's really the what is it rated? Radiant Glory. You're looking for the extra light damage. Another staple, the Dashing Gloves. This also drops out of the harbor, and again, it's either Good Intentions or Larcener. And then I have a few different pairs of boots that I wear depending on the situation. This one's really just like I have a nice resistance item, a decent one, some speed in case haste runs out, and permanent greater hero. Again, being lazy, I don't want to scroll it, so you can put anything you want here really. Got a few other things. Orcish Privateer boots for freedom of movement. Another one that's a heroic item that I've used, and then I'm always big on getting spell points back. So since I can absorb decent amounts of damage, I'll have a couple concordant opposition items from Heroic Shroud crafted, and they don't go off at the same time, but it maximizes my chances of having something going off when I get hit. So I have boots and goggles, and then this is probably my favorite item in the entire game, the Torque out of the Demon Queen raid. I grind this on every single character that has a blue bar. It's just the most useful thing ever, and you team it up with just one concordant opposition and you become a spell point battery. You can just go into shield block and let them beat on you, get your spell points back, and then continue on. For anyone who is interested in trying to solo raids or really push what you can do by yourself or in a team, something like this is mandatory, because eventually you will run into a situation where you're out of spell points, but you still have more to do before you can get to another shrine. So I can put together a quick video series about this as well, but it's super useful. A lot of times, you can solo this raid, you can solo the pre-raid and the raid itself. If you want to, it's usually better to get a group of friends together with the agreement that somebody will pass the torque to you and you pass everything else out to everybody else. I also recommend grinding it out on Epic Elite if you can, or Heroic Elite if you can't do the Epic side. The Epic side will drop the items and it'll drop shards if you ever want to upgrade a raid item. All you really need is the base item though. You don't necessarily need to upgrade this. And a word of warning, if you grind the Demon Queen, do not take your 20th run as Epic Elite. Don't do that. In fact, I don't even bother going into Epic for my 20th run, because that can reduce your odds of getting something base item wise in the reward list for completing your 20th. So I always do Heroic Elite on my 20th run, just so you know. Let's see here, what else do we have? Another Slaver's item, sorry. That's Charisma Impulse. These are my kinetic items, and then Intelligence, Kinetic Lore. One's for Spell Focus, and the other one I think is Spell Pen. Yeah, Spell Penetration. My newest addition is Stone of Malice. This is from Black and Blue, and it's really the Insightful Constitution Vitality. So it's a really nice sheltering item. Another one is the one that drops out of Search and Rescue, the Legendary Heartwood. That's a really nice docent for somebody who needs extra protection. And then also, of course, you could do the Thunderforge stuff. You could go for the Celestial equipment out of Tempest Bind and Legendary Hound. Tempest Bind, by the way, with this build is completely trivial. If you've watched my Tempest Bind video, if you can get your strength up over I think it's a 45 you need minimum. You should have enough intelligence that you can get to the main runes inside Legendary Tempest on Legendary Normal, and be able to solo that raid on your own. You just get the Fire and Ice rune, and then you run out, drop straight down to the end, open up 2 strength or 3 strength runes, fighting your way to the end guy, and then you can just take him out by putting in the Fire and Ice rune only. This particular Warlock build, in fact I think almost any Warlock build, does enough damage and has the right damage types to overcome the damage resistance. It's just the regeneration that's impossible to overcome. So anyway, that's another video I recommend you go watch. You can see some of the capabilities of this guy. But it's very easy to grind something like this out. The Celestial Sage and Guardian are the 2 docents that I really prefer. But Avenger's a nice one if you just want to pick up a weapon and go after something. Then a couple orbs. Some of they drop all over the place. This one I think is from Slavers. It's another one if I want to go into full-on DPS mode, especially with the Meridian Fragment attached. Highly, highly useful. Let's see. And then the last one, I kind of bounce my goggles around because I'm multi-classed. My DC can be resisted for the Sonic side of my my Eldritch Blast. So I use evocation items to try and minimize that, just to increase my DPS as much as possible. So here's really the staple parts of the build. I don't remember, unfortunately, I don't remember the order in which I took the feats. But the basic goal here, let me bring up my destinies as well. So you can see I've been active. I only have one more destiny really to finish out. Shirati's the big one, and really everything we're doing here is focused on DPS. So we're taking Arcane Pulse. You have to have all 3 of these guys max XP before you can get access to this. It's a level 29 feat. Epic Eldritch Blast, that adds more dice to our Eldritch effects. We've got Forced Escape, which I really enjoy because sometimes you roll a 1 and you get held. And it's also a neat little cleave-like effect where you blast everybody with Sonic. It can do pretty decent damage. Burst of Glacial Wrath. I've been just playing around with this. The damage is decent. I'm not cold spec'd at all. But it is kind of decent. I do like every once in a while I can freeze some people, but I really didn't have any options. I don't want to do Hellball. It's twice the spell points, and it just goes off once now. It doesn't go off twice within range. That's a bummer. So you know, any suggestions, I'm open to them, really, because I don't know. It's kind of an empty slot for me right now. Another Eldritch Burst. Let's see. That's the king right there. This is the one that makes it go. When this is fully charged up to 30 stacks, you're looking at 90 extra spell power, but it's 60% extra critical damage, which is fantastic, really. When you tie this up with Imperial Magic will make your criticals happen more often. This one makes them stronger. If you know Arcane Supremacy isn't about to go off, I kind of go between. Arcane Supremacy will go off usually after a shrine right away, and then I use Wellspring Power if I'm on timer still for Arcane Supremacy, and you got to keep that kind of in track in your head. But it's a nice bounce between, and every once in a while you'll get Wellspring and Arcane to go off at the same time at the beginning of like a red name fight because you just shrined. And it makes for some amazing criticals. Past lives, I haven't done too much. Past life, there's 2 double strike, 1 critical, done a couple heroics, and I think it's 2 Blade Forge past lives. Those aren't necessary for this at all. I've got plus 6 tomes all the way down. Again, not necessary. This build works just fine without them, unless you want to be soloing Tempest Spine. If you want to do that, you're going to need something like that, or you're going to need a creative way to get your strength up high enough. Let's see here. Empower, Extend, Force of Personality. Let's see, Shield Mastery and Improve Shield Mastery. Because I have Paladin, I didn't have to take Shield Proficiency, but if you don't have the Paladin, you'll need that as well. Insightful Reflexes, I don't know if you saw my saves, but they're pretty ridiculous. They're much higher if they can be much higher if you have a lot of past lives and things, but this is pretty decent. Hit points are almost 1,400, about 3,000, well, 2,900 spell points. So let's go back to this real quick. Scion of the Plane of Fire. This is more critical damage, and everything else is kind of gravy. I like the plus 30 universal spell power as well. That's nice. There's Shield Mastery, Quicken. I'm a big believer in Quicken. Mithril Body, so we have light armor instead of going heavy. And we're Fey. So we have all the basics as far as Fey goes. Now the other thing that really makes this go is the enhancements and the enhancement choices. I'll go through the destiny here in a minute. I'll bring up the enhancements first. What I focus on, I just love using cone shape. Nothing really comes close to this. It's amazing. If you really get used to this, it's probably the best ability in the Warlock class. I can't say enough about it, and I hope that I hope Standing Stone Games really doesn't nerf this, but I've heard rumblings that they may. It's a topic on the boards right now, but at any rate, as of right now, Cone is where it's at. We go up to 10% inside Tainted Lore for criticals. And then here's the hit point. So we need to get up to 13 points over here in Sacred Defender. And then everything else gets thrown into Archmage. And that's because of Master of Knowledge. We have to use Arcane Blast and Arcane Bolt to charge up our main feat. And this is also why I say this build really performs well as the dungeons get harder, because what the game designer likes to do is just throw more mobs at you with more hit points, which means Arcane Blast will hit more enemies at once, and for every single enemy you hit, you get a stack of Master of Knowledge with no delays. So if you hit a group of 10, 15 of them while you're in like Dungeon Alert Green, 2 Arcane Blasts that takes 6 seconds will get you up to your full 30 stacks if you're lucky. Usually it takes 3 or 4. Because not everybody's within the sphere, but that's okay. You still power up very, very quickly, and that's where this build just starts to take off. The closer you get to your 30 stacks of Master of Knowledge and the 10 stacks of Imperial Magic, then you really start to operate at highest efficiency. And then this one's always nice because it goes off almost immediately after a shrine. So you typically shrine and then go into big fights. So a lot of times you're able to leverage Arcane Supremacy right on red named or a group to set up the red name, but it always happens to come up at a very useful point. Usually when you're at your weakest, because after a shrine you lose all your charges of Master of Knowledge and Imperial Magic. Maximize my criticals here with Force. It's really the only thing I'm worried about. Get some more DC over here, but really it's up to you what you do. I like the spell points. I like the maximize reduction, and then of course Blade Forged, you get your heal. So that's the basic rundown here. The last thing is the destinies. So here's the other one of the more important features of this build is going into, this comes out of Divine Crusader, it's Empyrean Magic, and then this helps your critical chance. So once you get up to 10 stacks, you add plus 10 to your critical chance. It's a tier 3 ability out of Divine Crusader. I take in legendary legendary shield mastery from Unyielding Sentinel. That's a tier 2. I take Avenging Light and Endless Faith because I'm spell point. Don't want to say the word, but I love spell points. Avenging Light is to help charge up Empyrean Magic, and it's super cheap, 3 spell points. You can maximize, empower, intensify, whatever you decide as far as your feats go. I avoided Intensify, by the way, so I could get Wellspring of Power. because Intensify doesn't help me as a warlock, only Wellspring would, so that's why I made that choice. Endless Faith is just the plus 10%. That's really nice to my spell point pool. And then over in Sharadi, we have, I think, I get the impression this is pretty traditional here. Some healing springs, just extra healing, always nice. Some extra DR, some hit points. Let's see here, a little spell points, more DR, and then some elemental absorption. This is nice, especially when you're running any sort of quest. Instead of resetting something like Draconic Incarnation and going for Energy Sheath and getting very specific. So you could get a better absorption here, but it's only for one element type. I'm sure you guys know that, but I generally prefer this one. Just because it's nice, generic, and because I can be lazy. I don't like spending and swapping my feats around, or my destinies so much. Let's see here, Paralyzed. This is nice because you're not quite like a traditional Sharadi caster or Magic Missile with all the opportunities to set off your effects, but you have a few. About 40% of the number of a full-on Sharadi caster, maybe a little bit less. But this goes off more than you would think for 7%. And then Audience with the Queen, honestly, I forget about this all the time. I just don't need it that often. And if you watch the other videos, you'll see it. And it probably drives people crazy. I just forget to hit it all the time because I don't feel the pressure to fully hit everything that I need other than my full-on power-ups of Master of Knowledge and Empyrean Magic. And then your traditional Prism stuff. The rainbow and double rainbow. So that's the main build. We'll come over to spell points. This is where he sits, just generically. As far as spell points, he's got almost a 50% force. Light could be higher, but I just rely on the Lantern Ring, and as I grind out some more Slaver's Gear, that will go up. Let's see here. Sonic is decent. That gets up to 45 once I'm fully charged up. And then once I hit something like, basically, look at this, add about 110 to the spell powers, by the way. So it would be about a 700 force before I hit some of my basic effects. So this is more like what he is charged up. Spell power critical would be about 85. Chances would be plus 10. And throw on another 110 to force, so we're closer to a 900 when we're boosting. And then of course Arcane Supremacy on top of that to further boost it. Decent AC, not Reaper tank level or anything like that. Charisma is ridiculous. Con is very good. Intelligence could be a little higher if I found the right insight item. And that's really what you're doing with saves. The docent's really nice too because it adds an extra +8 through parry. So it's very tanky. It's very survivable. That's one of the major qualities I need as we're trying to do solos and duos of all these raids. And then of course you've got your area of effect items. Which is the core of what he really does damage-wise. He wants to be an AoE kind of a guy. He wants to be able to get through damage resistance and then just pound a target. Doesn't have to be a single target. We can do single target damage very well. However, this is built just for taking out large numbers of mobs very quickly, whether they're named or not. Didn't want any caveats. Like an instant killer would struggle sometimes against a boss, whereas a trash, they're number one inside Legendary Shroud, things like that. So that's kind of where we're coming from with the Rumblequake build. And if you have any questions, please post them, and I will definitely try to address whatever I can. Thanks.